Hi, I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I'm referred to as the Big Game Hunter because I've been hunting down leaders and staff for organizations for 40-plus years now. Welcome to Job Search Radio on webtalkradio.net. Job Search Radio is set up to help you find work more easily because I believe that job hunting doesn't have to be so hard. It doesn't have to be so difficult or so painful. It's just that many people are using the techniques that were effective a long time ago, and times have changed. And you need to adapt to those changes as well and do things different than just simply answering ads on job boards. So we're going to spend some time talking about networking groups today with John Sampson, who I met years ago as an IT professional who got involved with networking groups and setting up networking groups. John works in all phases of IT governance, including general management, development, operations, consulting, and program office. However, more to the point for today, he also facilitates and directs many of the activities of MIS Network Associates, a career management and self-help group of IT and telecom professionals founded in, get this one, folks, 1991. The group helps its members manage their careers and assist in efforts to reconnect with both permanent and contract employment. It has assisted over 1,000 people since its inception and currently supports a Yahoo group with approximately 400 members. Welcome to Job Search Radio. I appreciate you making time to spend chatting with everyone.
Glad to be here, Jeff, and hope I can be of help.
I'm sure you can be. Knowing as much as I do about you and your networking experience, you have a vast amount of knowledge that I know will be helpful to the listeners. You know, most people tend to think of networking these days as getting onto LinkedIn and sending out connection requests. And to me, that's just such a tiny piece. A lot of people tend to think of job hunting as getting onto job boards in the morning and sending out resumes. Yet at the same time, people find jobs that way, but statistically, that's maybe 6% of all job hunters get positions through job boards. When I think of networking, though, I think of what you do with your group, which is one-on-one, belly-to-belly networking with people. Instead of contacting recruiters, I tend to think of one-on-one stuff that you do. So if you were trying to give people advice about how to network effectively, where's the place you'd start with them? Because I know when people go to these groups the first time, they're a little apprehensive, right? They kind of hug the walls a bit. So how do we move them forward into getting used to networking? Where do you start when you counsel people about networking?
I guess where I would start is get out of the house. Your house is a place to live in. It's not a place to network in, and it's particularly not helpful in the context of belly-to-belly, face-to-face kinds of recruiting, kinds of networking, but it also applies to recruiters and recruiting. By getting out of the house, you can do this a number of different ways, but the main objective is to talk to everyone that you possibly can. You never know. If there's a tenet about finding a job, there's two of them. One is, I believe it's a numbers game, and two is, I believe, that you never know where the next one's coming from. So when I hear people say, I'm not going to talk to the brother-in-law I hate, or people who have been basketball players, I'm saying you're making a real mistake because you really don't know where that next lead is coming from. And if you want to create a lasting impression, meeting folks face-to-face, developing a facility of talking casually, but with a point, to any and all people who are around.
So what I'm hearing you say, John, is number one, and you said it so perfectly, you got to get out of the house and get out and about. You got to talk to people who you may not necessarily have a strong connection with initially, and work toward building those connections, and not start filtering before you even start talking. Did I catch that right?
You certainly did. I guess I would be saying, as part of that getting out and meeting people, it should be primarily in the context of trying to help them give before you get. And also with a very succinct, less than 15 seconds of who you are and what you want.
Those are two big points, John. I kind of want to split them up and spend some time with them. So when you say give before you get, could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes, I can. There's this human need or desire not to be used, i.e., not to be approached with, do you have a job for me? Can you get me a job? But rather with a dialogue about advice. Everybody likes to be thought of in terms of being able to give succinct advice to other people regarding the networking and job acquisition activity. You're asking for advice, potentially giving advice about a subject that may be tangential to the actual job hunting, but may be of interest to that person. And that advice can be everything from here's what you ought to do about cloud computing to gee, you should never think about being interested in the New York Jets. Sorry I brought it up. I hope I didn't offend anybody. But the real point is that you have something to offer and you offer it. And you also offer it in a context that can be helpful to them.
I can see it now. Two good networkers get together, and they say, how can I help you? And the other one goes, no, how can I help you? No, how can I help you?
Would that dialogue occurs more often than not. Unfortunately, it may not occur all that often, but when you gain some facility in this networking business, you'll have an answer for that very much to the point, and in a context that helps them too.
And thus what I heard you say is it doesn't really matter where you create that personal connection with the other person. You really just want to create that personal connection where it's not about help me find a job, please. Where you're out there seeing what you can do to help them, who you can introduce them to. And just giving
this, of course, and this, of course, can happen in all kinds of contexts. One that happened to me recently was I was at the local Stop and Shop and in a line, and oh, by the way, a mom and a daughter, I believe, were talking about an interview she'd had, and I just offered a couple of comments as they were talking about how this all worked. By the time we get out to our cars, which happen to be parked very close together, I have one given her a business card and two gotten a copy of her resume. Just as an aside, I think a resume is something that you should have at the ready always. You know, car is a fine place. In your jacket pocket when you go out to something more formal, just at the ready so that people can gain some insight about who you are and what you want.
You're hitting on so many cylinders here, and I want to make sure we don't lose track of all these points because I pushed off the 15-second introduction earlier, and I want to circle back to. You just mentioned carrying your resume and also carrying business cards as well. So let's go to the 15-second introduction. Give me an example of how you might introduce yourself to someone in a few seconds, John.
It would be with a name, with what you do, It might be his particular company or companies or types of companies that you are interested in. You want to give them an opportunity to help you. Now, and companies, of course, are particularly of interest. It's one thing for us here in the New York metropolitan area to talk about, I'm interested in financial services. Do you have any idea what that really means? It's literally thousands of companies. But if you can say, I'm interested in J.P. Morgan, I'm interested in Prudential, then all of a sudden there may be a connection in terms of in-laws, people who are in the same group that you are of whatever type, PTAs, things of that variety. People cannot easily remember what a firm in the life sciences business might be, but they can definitely remember Novartis and United Healthcare.
So could you give everyone an example of how you might introduce yourself to someone?
Hi, I'm John Sampson. I have substantial experience in the IT arena. I am interested in a senior position, probably in development. Particular companies of interest to me today are UPS and United Healthcare. My name is John Sampson. And I guess one thing I would say to you is there's this business of how much can a human take in and absorb in a particular period of time. So the introduction can't be A's, D's, and doses, and it should stay away from the fact that I love the Yankees and that kind of thing, and concentrate, as I said earlier, on who you are and what it is you want.
So when you're doing the introduction with someone, I kind of want to tie the bow for everyone. The two of you are introducing yourselves to one another. You might say your introduction about what you're interested in, as you just did, and then might respond by saying, and how can I help you? Is that what you might do?
Absolutely. And in fact, you might end your introduction, oh, by the way, can I help you? Are you in transition? That kind of thing.
Gotcha. And with business cards, for people who aren't working, obviously there's an expense associated with getting a business card. There was someone I interviewed recently for Job Search Radio who made the suggestion of handing out two business cards. One for the individual, one that they might be able to give to someone.
Great idea, because you're trying, let me go back to a point I made earlier on, which is I believe this is a numbers game, and you want to spread that wealth out as best you can, as often as you can, and particularly if you are now giving a person who you've met and who may actually know somebody who works for a name Prudential, a way to introduce you without their having to spend a lot of time writing down things or remembering anything, and trusting to the frailties of our human memories.
Now, you've got business cards, and what should go on the card?
I'm sorry?
What should go on a business card? Assuming you're not employed right now.
Right. Well, let me talk a little bit about mine. Name and address, contact information, phone, email, maybe LinkedIn address. In addition, something about you. There's nothing like a catchy phrase. I'm the go-to guy for management. I help sales sell. Something like that you could put on the card. On the back of my card, in my facilitation kind of role, I put down things to remember as you are out and about looking for a new opportunity, and one of them is to get out of the house, talk to the Western world. Remember that you don't know where the next one's coming from. I can't believe how many people have no, I won't kind of response to many of the things I'm saying, where I think in this activity, you definitely want to be out there in every format that you can, as professionally as you can be, and with giving information about yourself and what you want.
So true, John. And I understand, because I remember years ago when I went to my first networking meeting, I was a wall hugger for a while. And then I realized that there was a purpose why I was supposed to be there. Now, I was coming to one of your groups as a recruiter, and I was trying to meet folks and understand whether or not they were folks I could help. And I realized I had to let go of the wall for a while, and I resolved that I wouldn't make that mistake again. And I wound up going to Toastmasters meetings in order to practice speaking extemporaneously with people, because I was initially uncomfortable. I know it's kind of hard to imagine me being shy, but I wanted to.
Especially you. No, only kidding.
No, it's true.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't met Jeff, you'll understand why we're laughing. In any case.
How do people find out about networking groups? I'm sorry. Please continue, John.
If we were to talk to groups, there are a large number of them here in the metropolitan New York area. For those people, thelandingexpert.com is the place to find out about them, and there's 60 or 70 pages worth of them. But they tend to focus in on sometimes geographic areas, sometimes disciplines like IT, and they usually have some kind of prepared presentation about a subject relevant to the job search. Some of them are very much to the point. Some whole sessions about what to do with a resume, that kind of thing. But then others that are definitely appropriate, for instance, one that's coming up in December has to do with body language. Very sophisticated presentation with actual pictures of interviews and dialogues between people that really do indicate certain kinds of things if you're attuned to watching for them. And of course, in the
my concern, John, is that people are going to listen to this at some point in the future. And when you're speaking of December, I know when you're speaking of, but they may be listening to this 2 years from now.
Sorry.
That's okay. And for those of you who aren't in the New York metro area, you can do Google searches for networking groups in your field, in your geographic area. You can get in touch with trade groups, your local chamber of commerce, meetups. There are sites like Eventbrite, EVENTBRITE.com, where you can find out about different groups that meet that might relate to the kind of work that you do in the geographic area that you want to be doing it.
Glad you brought up Eventbrite, because a person who's at the top of my landed list as we speak landed at a life sciences company here in the metropolitan area, and the initial contact came as a result of her signing up for an event where the people who had also signed up and their company affiliations was given. And from that, she did some networking, spent a fair amount of time, and by the time she got to talk to them directly, face-to-face, there were at least 3 people inside who brought up her name. A very, very powerful thing for you folks on the outside looking in. Having somebody inside to vouch for you or just to refer you, really very powerful.
And when I coach people about how to get entree into a firm, one of the things I tell them is where you can, other than recruiters, of course, which is folks the kind of work I do, you try to get an introduction from someone who works there, because in effect it's a testimonial for you.
I think, it's very interesting. I've heard a number of internal recruiters talk about this. And in fact, today I believe a large number of them are overwhelmed. One, as a result of cuts in corporate staffs that have been going on now for years, and two, as a result of a fairly large number of people who are out and about looking. Anybody who can help them with that process, and an internal referral is such help, comes welcome. And indeed may be rewarded because corporations are paying folks for some of the people that land that way.
It's absolutely true, and it's getting employee referral bonuses, as they're often referred to, is a pretty common practice with medium to large-sized employers. Sometimes startup firms issue additional stock to employees who refer individuals who are hired. So there is an incentive that an employee has, but you got to give them something to hold on to, where they understand something about you as the two of you get to know one another. So they're not just referring you because, please help me get a job. It's not one of those situations. It's one where you actually have something of value to their employer.
I guess another thing about that internal referral is simply, in some cases, here's a person who's been working there for years, and you can now have a reasonable conversation about culture, as well as to start to understand what their backgrounds may be and use that in terms of further introductions to other firms. Remember, this networking business is constantly keeping in mind that you are trying to extend your network to the best of your ability, because, as I said earlier, you really don't know where the next one's coming from. And if they know you and something about what you're interested in, hopefully they will be inclined to say, I don't know the detail of this technology job in computers, but oh, by the way, my brother-in-law works at a life sciences company, and I'd be happy to refer you.
Terrific. Hey, John, I know we've missed one huge point.
And that
Can I throw it in?
Yes, please.
You know, when you meet someone in one of these networking groups, you collect these business cards, you collect the resume, you have a chit-chat for a while. But more often than not, the big mistake that people make after going to a networking meeting is never following up.
It's a real mistake, and it's a real mistake from a couple of points of view. Like as not, you may have committed to doing something in that initial conversation, and you want to make sure that you do it. One, because you said you would, but two, here's another way to reference yourself again with this person, particularly if you have some kind of common interest, either of a professional nature or of a social nature. The ability to get back, and every time you do it, to build further on this basic relationship that you've started potentially in a networking group, but like as not at Dunkin' Donuts tomorrow morning, it's really something that you should look forward, one, to doing, and two, because it's in the very best interest of your campaign to get connected.
It amazes me how few people follow up. You know, even on LinkedIn, you know, because I'm very visible on LinkedIn for a variety of reasons, you know, I get connection requests all the time. And all that happens is I get a connection request. There's rarely a follow-up from anyone. What kind of relationship are we building?
Not the one you want. However, you know, this networking business includes people with whom you have a real connection. You may have worked together for years, maybe your brother, things of that variety. And then a whole series of people where there is a much weaker connection. But don't underestimate the power of those weak connections, because that really will produce some opportunities, some of them not well studied, and by that I mean, gee, the person who referred you on only knew that you worked in IT, didn't know that you were really an operations kind of person in IT. So don't underestimate what those weak connections can do as long as they have some idea about you and what you want. Also, very important that you, to go back to a point that we talked about earlier, that you plan to do some giving as much as you can, because people don't, as a human trait, don't like to be used, but if they feel that there's some give and take in this, usually they're much more willing to participate.
Absolutely true. And folks, I'll just simply say, John and I have known one another for what seems like 100 years. And he's been a relentless networker with me for the longest time. Initially, we met because he was looking for work, and I gave him some advice, and I was helpful, but over the years, I've never found a job for him. That's the fact. But he's invited me out to his networking group a number of times where I've helped folks out there. He's introduced me to people religiously, and thus when I have the opportunity to have someone speak with you about networking, my first call was to John, because frankly, he was just such a good illustration of how to be an effective networker in my mind that I knew he had some great pointers for you. So, John, how can folks reach you if they have any questions about networking?
My email address, which is JCS. That's two S's, JCSSPIKE@Yahoo.
Terrific. John, thank you so much for making time to share with our listeners about how to be an effective networker. And folks, we're going to be back next time doing some more conversations about networking with Terrence Seaman. John, I'm pretty sure you know Terrence.
Yes, I do.
And I just want to simply say that if you have questions about any element of job hunting, feel free to reach out to me through liveperson.com. I'd be happy to answer your questions that way. Or if you want job search coaching from me, you can come over to one of my websites, which is VIPpersonalsearch.com, where I'll go through a couple of ideas for how to do networking there and provide coaching advice for you one-on-one on a personal basis with you, whether it's a one-time thing where we're going to spend a couple of hours speaking or on a regular monthly basis. So this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter.